What is going on, alpha males? Welcome to Alpha Male Podcast, where we talk about what it means to be a man the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values. We don't apologize for what we are, strong, dominant men. You got any wokeness, any political correctness that's not true, you can leave that junk at the door and step into the podcast. Today we're going to be talking about what a tragedy or travesty it is that we lose some of our beautiful, strong, masculine Christian heritage that is trying to be erased, forgotten. And how that's not just a tragedy for a select few, but for everybody. Anyway, that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to put in a brief rapid-fire version of the bio, as today's more of a philosophical discussion episode, and we'll get into the main topic. While you're listening to it or fast-forwarding through it, if you've heard it before, it would be appreciated if you liked, subscribed, and left a review of the podcast. Blessed to have served in the military, law enforcement, combat veteran, private contractor, competition shooter, lifelong hunter, guide. Blessed by God that He got me through all those things so I could share this firsthand training, knowledge, experience with you to serve you today. Let's dive into the podcast. First of all, let's talk about what actual racism is and what it's not. This new woke garbage affirmative action philosophy, the antithesis, the opposite of what Martin Luther King wanted. A man to be judged on his merit, on his skills, the content of his character, rather than the color of his skin. You should not get special treatment because you're white, because you're black, because you're any other color, but because of what kind of man you are, the caliber of man that you are. There are a lot of great men. My focus today is going to be especially on great Christian men and warriors that are maligned, discolored, and I mean that metaphorically, written off because they were one, Christian, or two, white, or three, all of the above. If you're white, then you're bad, guilty by association. If you're Christian, you're a bigot, guilty by association, is what these new age garbage philosophy people would have you believe. Somebody being white does not make them good or bad any more than somebody being black makes them good or bad. It doesn't matter. It's skin color. It has nothing to do with their moral character or content. How about the Vikings? Now, this has kind of seen a resurgence, but sadly not the way that I think that it should. The Vikings were a mighty warrior people with a great warrior culture. And that's a rich part of our heritage, right? A rich part of our ancestry. They were influenced in England, Constantinople, France, Normandy especially, Denmark, not to mention the actual Scandinavian countries, into Russia, the Rus. They were a Nordic people. Even if you're not descendants of them, they impacted world culture, they impacted trade, they impacted the spreading of knowledge in a very massive way. And although they started out as pagans, when they saw the beauty of Christ, when they saw the beauty of the gospel, they converted. They were mighty warriors. Nobody made them convert by the edge of the sword. They converted because they saw the wisdom and knowledge and love of Christ. And there's a lot of historians that I really respect in their knowledge and their teaching. But if they're not Christian, something that seems like they're groping in the dark for this truth, and they don't understand it because to those who are perishing, it's foolishness. But if you are called, if you are chosen, if you have given your life to Christ, then you get it, right? And you don't need it explain. They always look for these explanations like, oh, they must have converted due to geopolitics, or they must have converted due to economic reasons. How about they converted because they saw the truth of Christ? They saw the love of Christ and it transformed them radically the way that it did me and hopefully you. Maybe that's why they gave their pagan garbage religion for the only true religion. They were still mighty warriors, but they were Christian mighty warriors, devout Christians. And they spread Christianity like a shining light in the world. And they were still mighty men of war. How about we remember that heritage? How about the Crusades? And I'm so tired of this garbage New Age apologetics. I worked with a couple of guys, and not Christians yet, but one of the first things they brought up about Christians and how bad they were was the Crusades, which is a stupid garbage argument, and I shut it down in about 10 seconds, not because I'm intellectually superior, because it's a stupid argument that if you look into it for 5 minutes, you'll realize is garbage. Okay, the Crusades. Christians in the Holy Land and Jews were being persecuted. They sent out a help request to Christians in the West, saying, please come help us. Savage, disgusting Muslim raiders went into the Holy Land and killed and conquered and did unspeakable, just horrific, not just killing, but torturing and violating and degrading the image of God bared in humans. That's what they were doing. And the Christians and the Jews cried out, help us. And we sent Christians over there to help them. If you got a problem with that, I'd say your morals are pretty whack. If you and your neighbor have been neighbors for a long time, you get along, kids play together, you're of a similar community, and then somebody comes from somewhere else, you don't even know, doesn't even matter, and they kill the man of the house, the husband, they kill him, they force the children into slavery, and then do unspeakable, horrific, unconsensual things with the woman to keep this, PG, and she cries out to you, help me, and you go kick that man, or those men that did that to that household, you kick them out again? Is there a moral problem with that? Again, if you think there is, I think you got a problem, because that's what we did in the Crusades. Christians and Jews cried out to us for help from these Muslim invaders, and we did. And there's no apology needed for that. I'm sure some individual crusaders did some horrible things. Okay, that doesn't negate the argument. Except for Jesus Christ, anybody on this list, any great Christian man in history, or predating that Jewish man in history, like King David, they did bad things. And I appreciate that the Bible doesn't whitewash that. Don't paint over that, right? They let you see the ugly, but that a man can still be good and a force for good. I'm sure some Christian crusaders did horrible things. That doesn't negate the fact that the Crusades weren't a bad thing. So stop with all this stupid apologizing for something that doesn't need apology for. And because they were white Christians, doesn't make what they did bad. When they were killing Muslim terrorists invading a land that wasn't theirs, doing horrible, unspeakable things. Look up some of the things the Muslims were doing to the Jews and Christians there in Jerusalem and Judea, and why they cried out for help to the Christian West. So again, that's an argument that breaks down in about 5 minutes if you actually look into it. But most people don't. They're just like, oh yeah, my bad. It's not your bad. Don't apologize for something that doesn't need apology. That's a sign of weakness. That's a beta male move. Stand up to it with truth. You might overlook some of the great figures of the Crusades like William Marshall. How about Constantine? Again, people that don't get it, right? They might be wise in earthly standards, but they don't know the transforming power of Christ. They'll try and be like, oh, maybe he wasn't really a Christian. Maybe he was just doing it for political reasons. Maybe he was doing it for whatever. Maybe he was doing it for wealth. How about he got smacked in the face, metaphorically, with the power and majesty and truth of Christ and converted? And converted his army and his nation and large chunks of the world because of the power of Christ. And he was a mighty warrior. How about that's the story of Constantine? And how about we should not shy away from that or try and rewrite history? History is history, whether you like it or not. I'm not for going the other way either and trying to erase all the bad things some of these people did. That's part of history too. But judge it on its merits. There is nothing wrong with strong Christian men of God being a rich part of our human history. It's a collective. It doesn't just hurt a certain segment when you lie to people. Lies are bad. They're malum in se. When you try and say something's true that's not true, or try and pretend something that isn't true is, it hurts. Period. So start standing up for the rich Christian male warrior heritage that we have, and don't let somebody guilt you out of it or apologize for it. Stand up and be a man. Look into some of these figures for yourself, and not some secular perspective. Look at it from the truth. But figures like Constantine, William Marshall. A good case in point, Martin Luther King Jr. was named after Martin Luther, a great Christian reformer who stood up, a warrior in a different way, more of a spiritual warrior, but he stood up against the power of the Roman Catholic Church. How about Oliver Cromwell, the Holy Roman Empire? How about the Vikings that became Christian and led men in battle? How about the Knights Templar? And I'm not talking about some stupid garbage rewriting of history. Ooh, whatever that stupid book is. I'm talking about the actual Knights Templar, and I'm talking about like the Hospitallers, the poor Knights of Christ, who took vows of poverty and put their lives on the line to serve Christians as warriors. How about the Teutonic Knights of Germany? Were the Nazis white? Yeah, they were white. I'm not trying to erase that. They were white. They weren't evil because they were white. They were evil and white. But also, the Teutonic Knights were German and white and did great things. Maybe look into that. Don't forget the other one, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The Teutonic Knights, the Knights Templar, the Knights Hospitallers, that's part of our heritage. So stop apologizing and know the truth. Now, I want to caution you as I'm rolling out of this episode, don't worship these men. These men are not to be worshipped. There's only one man ever in history that is to be worshipped, and that is the man, Jesus Christ, God made flesh. And he became flesh and dwelt among us. Christ is the only man to worship, the only man that is okay to worship. That doesn't mean you can't learn from other men. Right? That's why these other men and women are in the Bible, to learn from them. Don't worship them. Worship Christ and Christ alone. And as much as these strong Christian men in history embodied that here on earth, respect that and learn from it. And where they differed, learn from that as well. But don't try and rewrite history. With that, men, I'm going to say thanks for listening, and I'll close this out with a... I'm going to say thanks for listening and close this out with a verse of the day. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. In him was life, and life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. This man came for a witness to bear witness of the light, that all through him might believe. He was not the light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. That was the true light, which gives light to every man coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through him, and the world did not know him. He came to his own, and his own did not receive him. But as many as receive him, to them he gave the right to become children of God. To those who believe in his name, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word became flesh, and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Thanks for listening. Have a blessed day.